Get this
we have a
situated.
whole.
I saw you, Joe. Good evening. The Policy Committee of the Kennett Consolidated School District's Board of School Directors is for September 29th is called to order. I'm here. I'm Ethan Kramer, and the other members, LaToya Myers
Present.
and Lynn Golden-Merarkey.
Present.
And President Cronenberg is here ex officio.
Hi.
If the other people at the table would introduce themselves, please, starting with Mr. Tracy.
Kimberly Rizzo Saunders. I'm the superintendent.
Michael Finnegan, board member, but member of the public tonight.
Vicki Garrett, board member, member of the public.
Michael Barber, Assistant Superintendent.
Cassandra Jones, Assistant Superintendent.
Thanks to all. So we'll get started. And the first item of business is the Policy Committee minutes from our last meeting, which was May 19th. Is there a motion to approve those to be passed on to the board?
So move, Myers.
Thank you, Ms. Myers, and a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Golden-Merarkey. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, members of the committee in favor of approving these minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So the Policy Committee meeting minutes for May 19th are approved unanimously. I do intend to entertain public comment as we go through, but is there public comment on any item on the agenda at this point? Hearing none, we'll continue forward. So Policy 702, which is about gifts, grants, and donations, is a revised policy, and I'll turn it over to our superintendent to introduce that. Thank you.
So I just want to start by saying we are in the process of really looking at how policies are going to work through administration. So as of right now, it looks like we are going to work to have the person who is responsible for that area be the person who comes to meetings. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark because he's the CFO, and these three are all financial policies. I will just say that we will be working on policies because some of them haven't been updated since the 1980s when I was in high school. Ouch!
Thank you, Dr. Rizzo Saunders. And with that, we'll turn it over to Mr. Tracy.
Okay, beginning this evening, policy 702. It's pretty self-explanatory. From time to time, we do receive donations, gifts that are recognized by the district. We are not a 503C, but we can accept donations. There's a section of the IRS code that does make it allowable under circumstances as a tax write-off. The procedure that we follow not only is outlined here, but we do acknowledge the gift. We do not give a dollar value to the gift. So that is up to the individual donor to actually establish a value and defend such if they are ever audited by the IRS. I'll be happy to entertain any questions that the board may have, but like I said, it's a very short, abbreviated policy for your review this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Perhaps we'll start with the members of the committee. Ms. Golden-Maraki, are there
Sure.
questions?
Yes, I just wanted a little clarity on the new phrasing. The board shall be responsible for the maintenance of any gift it accepts unless otherwise stipulated. Just trying to see how that's going to look moving forward.
Sure. I mean, that really means that if a donor, let's use a computer, for example, that has a value that would be worth to the district, we always assess whether or not it has either educational or operational value to the district before receiving that value. In this case, the donor would not be responsible for the ongoing maintenance or repair of such. It would be on the sole responsibility of the district to do that. Some of the items that I would say that we look at pianos, for example, or a piece of equipment that gets donated periodically for us in any, form, fashion, condition. So if it is a Steinway piano, we may accept that donation, such as the one from Longwood. However, if it is one that has been sitting dormant in someone's basement for years, we are going to reject and not accept that piano. But if we do accept the piano, we are taking sole responsibility for the ongoing maintenance of said piano.
Other questions from members of the committee?
No question from me, just a statement that I like the piece in here where it says that we'll honor the intent, make every effort to honor the intent, but it reserves, we reserve the right to use it in the best interest of the district. So I just wanted to point that out.
Very good, and I agree with that as well. My one question, Mr. Tracy, was about endorsement by the board. Should that also include endorsement by the board or the district, given the potential that someone might interpret a naming right or something like that as an endorsement by a superintendent, for example, which is a prominent public figure in our community? Is there a reason for that to be a board, or could that be changed to endorsement by the board or district, or simply district?
I think the intent is just to acknowledge the receipt of the donation. Anything controversial certainly would rise through the superintendent's office and to the board. Does that answer the question? We do have
So that really is a naming rights kind of issue, which is obviously a big kind of the endorsement of a product. You accept the gift, and then you have the right to sort of say, the school district likes us. So I think explicitly saying that it's the board doesn't endorse, but neither does the district, I think might be helpful to that end. Does that make sense, or am I misinterpreting the purpose of that clause?
No, it can add certain clarity, so we can make that modification.
And then my second question, the additional part, we have another policy coming up where we've shifted a whole lot of stuff to our administrative regulations. The council potential, the guidelines here, the delegation of responsibilities, council potential donors, et cetera, would folks see that as more likely to be part of the administrative regulation, or does that need to be, do those four things need to be put into the board policy? And I'm open to either version, but I keep raising that because I do think that's been a helpful mechanism, is to move as much as we can to the more easily modified and more specific administrative regulation when it doesn't need to be approved by the board. Any thoughts on those four items? Council encourage individuals to consult with the superintendent, report to the board. I think that's an obvious, right? That's always going to be done. Acknowledge receipt and value. To me, that's also not necessarily something that we have to enforce as a board, but.
So I think in this case, having those four things, because what it's really doing is directing the superintendent to do those four things versus what we might do internally when we accept a gift, have an estimate,
For instance, if we were given a Steinway piano, if anyone has a Steinway piano they want to give us, we would be looking to both have that appraised, have it insured. And so those are different steps that we would take and put potentially in an AR. But this is what the board is basically saying, you must do 1, 2, 3, and 4 at the minimum. That makes sense?
It sure does. No,
Okay.
that's exactly the question, and I think that cuts to it, and I'm comfortable with leaving those in. Are there public comments coming from anybody involved, but especially those at the table?
Question, this policy is just for supplies and equipment, not cash, is that correct? Because if it's cash, you have to honor donor intent. Because the title says gifts, grants, donations, but then the purpose just says contribute supplies and equipment. So is cash not fall into this policy?
My impression is that cash does fall into this policy. Mr. Tracy, do you have a?
Yes, that is correct.
And typically, I mean, in all my years of dealing that, if someone donates cash, everything boils back down to donor intent of how it can be used. So I'm just questioning.
Yeah, it
How you
depends
cannot do
on
that.
the cash donation. Let's use Giant. They give donations based upon their collection at the register, the roundup. That donation comes in, the only qualifier for that donation is that it's used through our food service program.
I'm thinking more specific. Someone gives you a check to be used for robotics.
Yes.
You can't use that for anything other than the donor's intent.
Right, and I can't recall the last time that we had a check that was designated for our general fund purpose. Typically, that would be a student activity fund. So that is a donation, but to a very specific fund that we only have custodial rights to. It's not actually a general fund. Like, I can't recall the last time someone made a undesignated or even a donation to a general fund line item. It typically is a student activity fund. Athletic boosters collect, which are really separate and distinct from the district, so I can't recall that happening. But in the event that we would, yes, I would take it under this policy, whether or not it was designated for a specific purpose.
Mr. Finnegan, I think that's a legal question. Pennsylvania is, having been part of this nonprofit world, Pennsylvania has actually fewer restrictions in terms of donor intent than I think maybe any other place besides District of Columbia. And I think it is, I mean, there's famous cases around this issue. So this is probably a legal question. If we were to meet the legal requirement, that's one thing. Is your thought that we should set a policy that would be more stringent than this, that we should endorse donor intent as part of this policy?
Well, it's just the title says donations, and then it says we don't have to honor donor intent. I'm just saying, but in the case of cash, maybe we need to be a little more specific.
Please.
So can I give you a for example on why you may want to? Of course, we want, if someone is going to give us a large sum of money, we absolutely want to recognize and respect their intent. However, intent over many, many years can result, a strict adherence to intent can result in not being able to spend the money. So we had a everlasting trust that was set up in my previous district. And the intent, and the only way you could spend the money, was on oranges and chocolate for Christmas. It was set up in the 1920s. So whenever we tried to spend that money, we couldn't spend the money. At the point that I became the superintendent, there was like, I don't know, $100,000 or more in that, and no one can ever spend it because of the way it was set up. So I hear what you're saying, and of course we want to recognize and respect intent, but we also want to make sure it's written in a way that we can actually spend the money over time.
Yeah, so maybe, agreed upon intent, just something, but right now it's wide open. Someone wants to give money to the music program, we determine we want to buy football helmets. I mean, you're not going to get money from that person ever again if you do that. So,
Absolutely.
but it's not stated at all, so
Yeah, I think in the receipt of the gift, it should be, clarified that the purpose of the gift will be honored, but maybe a clause saying in the event where it cannot, this is what is agreed upon. So I don't know if that's a certain way to move forward.
I've experienced this in the past, working with many boards and nonprofits. I just don't want to see us get in a situation where someone comes back and say, you did not honor my intent. You gave it to something I wasn't going to support. So just something.
The policy, to Ms. Meyer's comment, the board will make every effort to honor the intent of the donor and its use of the gift. That you're looking for something more stringent than that?
As long as the donor is well aware that their donation may not go to what their stated intent is, somehow.
And Mr. Finnegan, if I might, if we have that conversation with the donor, and we have had that where we've redirected funds to either the PTO group and/or another outside organization such as KEF, who can handle the funds more adequately to their desire. So we pretty much predetermine whether or not memorials is one that, we have a lot of back and forth with. If a family would like to make a donation of $500 for a memorial somewhere on the high school property, we intervene to discuss what exactly will that look like, because we've had issues with trees that then subsequently have to be removed and/or a bench that is to be held sort of as a perpetuity. So these discussions had before the district typically will accept that donation.
Mr. Tracy, could we put something in specific to monetary donations versus equipment?
How about something as simple as the board will make every effort to agree upon and honor the intent of the donor? That would kind of saying you're having the conversation beforehand so that they know that it may or may not go where they want it. Just a suggestion. I said maybe make every effort to agree upon and honor the intent. You're saying if someone's going to make a donation, you have a conversation up front. I'd just like to see that conversation up front is somehow memorialized in the policy.
Yes, we can wordsmith it, sure.
To, if I may, to understand and to honor the intent of the donor. Thank you.
I've been in this before. And you don't want an angry donor.
And I think the reason I mentioned this was because of that. I think that in all circumstances, you want to honor the donors as much as possible. However, things are dynamic. And so as they are evolving, you may not be able to. I've been in situations where a donor gave money and then because of other donations, that funding could not then continue with the intent. So you have to make those decisions. And so I think for me, this line was great because it says, yes, we'll make every effort at the point in time. We accepted this, it aligns. We want to do exactly what you want us to do with this donation. And then tomorrow something else might happen that then prevents us. And so letting the board making every effort, but letting donors know that there could be, right, from up front, so.
And I would endorse understand as in light of Ms. Meyer's comments. I also, this is an area that unfortunately has been litigated. So, I mean, probably the most prominent example of this is the Barnes Foundation will, which was very stringent and could not be broken, and it was broken by a Pennsylvania court to move the Barnes Foundation. So I think understand is not, I think agree to implies an additional contract, whereas understand just implies that a conversation has been had, which I think is what
More like discuss,
yeah.
so understands fine.
Discuss would be fine too, yeah. Anything that does not imply further, anything that somebody might turn to and say, well, I think I'll go to court on this one, because we certainly don't want to put anybody in the future in that position. A good discussion. Other thoughts from the public or? All right. Very good. So do we want to make a recommendation with that change, then to move this forward to the board, and with or without a recommendation for approval? A motion from one of the members of the committee.
I move to make a recommendation to the board for policy 702, gifts, grants, donation, with the change to the section involving intent, that we add understanding to that line. But I do, with that one change, I move that we put this.
Is there a second tweak?
Second tweak? I think it was just.
Didn't we discuss
the-
a second tweak?
I don't believe a second tweak was,
Okay, sorry.
I suggested something that I think I abandoned, so, yeah, thank you. Sorry, yeah. So the motion is, Ms. Myers' motion is to,
I'm recommending that policy 702 be recommended to the board for approval with the tweak to that one section, adding the understanding to that line.
and a second to that motion. Thank you. Any further discussion with the motion on the table? Hearing none, the members of the committee can vote. All in favor of moving this forward as amended with the recommendation to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously, and we'll move this one forward. On to the next.
All right, moving on to policy 706, our property records. Not to be confused with retention of records. That's a more detailed policy with a lot of stipulations on how long we need to keep payroll, student records, IEPs, et cetera. This one has to do predominantly with physical assets held by the district. There's a lot of little red changes in this policy being proposed this evening, but the district is already in full compliance with all the red line new additions. We're looking at property records such as deeds, which are held in the district's name. Some of those deeds will be brought to the board to be put in Kennett Consolidated School District's name at the October board meeting. But we do have record of all deeds, titles for vehicles, titles for trailers, all of our easements and lease agreements stored safely in a safe. Furthermore, we contract with a company called Asset Works. That is something that's approved by the board, either for a 5 or 6 year contract. We do have a physical inventory performed by Asset Works, which includes labeling and tagging of our assets. That is predominantly used for two things. One is our financial records, because that is a line item in all of our financial statements where we have our fixed asset cost as well as depreciation on those assets, but also probably more importantly for our insurance products. So each one of our buildings and the entire contents of that building are contained in a very detailed log presented by Asset Works. It is increased annually by cost of living indexes for property, and then they do physical assets every 3 years. So we do have that property maintained pretty significantly. And I believe that kind of details out, certainly we capture that all via our purchase orders. So let's use a maintenance truck. When we purchase that truck, we have the value of the truck, we have the VIN number of the truck, we have the age of the truck, we have the description of the truck. All that is captured in our asset detail. So that will be there in our records until such time as we dispose of that asset, at which time it's then removed. So I'd be happy to answer any questions the committee has.
And if I may, so the main change here, could you just speak to the change to the existing policy and the purpose of that main change?
Sure. So under authority, the change went from the last line, it says intervals that are updated annually to that coincide with property insurance renewal. And then on the back, under guidelines, there are 3 additional sentences that were added to this policy. I'd be happy to read them, but I think you. Sure. Major items of equipment shall be subject to annual physical spot check inventory to determine loss, location of, or depreciation. Any major loss shall be reported to the board. Records of consumable supplies shall be maintained on a continuous inventory basis. And the last statement that was proposed and added to this draft policy is equipment shall be identified with a permanent tag that provides appropriate school district identification.
Thanks for indulging me on that. Questions from other members of the committee?
Just curious if this policy also includes things like electronics and, except, yeah.
Capture and ensure all of our, it depends upon the purchase. So if you buy a single laptop, it does not meet the threshold of a fixed asset. If you buy them in bulk, which
Yes.
we do through Dan McGuire, his team, buying 1,000 units at a time, then it is a depreciable asset and we can capture that.
Okay. And how long until it's considered obsolete? Is it like a 5-year window?
We actually use depreciation schedules that are set up, so they're not determined by the districts. Buildings are 25 years, computers now, because of a rotating schedule, have a 4-year lifespan, so it's really specific. Thank you, Mr. Cronenberg. So it's very specific to the type of asset, and we do have that schedule detailed out for asset works when they come in.
Okay, great, thank you.
I just had one. There's a list on page 2 that kind of just details what will be kept in the record, and I'm wondering if warranty information is something that was thought about or would matter. That was just something I'm throwing out there. And then in the new sentences that were added at the end, new guidelines, just wondering how we define a major loss.
Yes, we certainly preserve all of our warranties, most specifically roof warranties, building warranties, things that actually have to do with systems in the buildings. And we're going to have a lot of warranties now with the 2 new buildings. But we do catalog all of our warranty work and pursue that when necessary. And your second question, I'm sorry.
No worries. At the bottom of page 2, the new guidelines, it talks about major loss shall be reported to the board. Just wondering what threshold major loss would.
Any major loss would be subject to an insurance claim. So we would be actually reporting that to the board. Now, I could say that we've had liability insurance claims such as due process claims. We have employment practice claims. We just haven't had a property loss that has risen to that value in the recent years.
Okay, so I would just note these new guidelines are direct, and I think do impose an obligation from the board that I think is appropriate, but I'm glad to see that. I think in terms of, I would endorse adding, well, again, that comes into the question of which information should be added by administrative regulation or by practice, and which should be added by mandate from the board. Warranty does seem like an appropriate thing to have on the list, would you?
My mentioning it is just based on what is the 7 things that are in this list. If
Yep.
we're maintaining these, that to me seems like one that you would just, and it seems like I know we're already doing it. I've heard you talk about that, Mr. Tracy, about us and making sure our warranties are where they need to be, so.
But I wouldn't, I certainly would endorse if you want to add that as an amended item. Mr. Tracy, does that seem reasonable?
Sure, there's zero effort since we're already maintaining this record, so this would just memorialize it as part of the policy.
Thank you, and I do think that's appropriate. So I would add that to the motion. Are there other comments from other members of the board or members of the public? Or members of the board acting as members of the public? Okay. All right, so with those changes, with that change, maybe there's a moment for a motion here.
I move that the committee recommend to the board for approval policy 706 with one amendment to the section that the director of the business administration shall maintain a system of property records which shall show in that section, add warranty.
Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Kowarski. Any further discussion? Being attacked by a fly here. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Members of the committee, all in favor of recommending this with the addition of number 8 in that section to the board for approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to the last of the 3 questions we're considering tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kramer. The last policy for this evening is policy 814, and I'm going to defer to Dr. Barber because it is not solely a financial or operational policy, but more of compliance.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Other than the updated language from 1983 until present, the 2 major highlights I will make for the board is the additions are staff members who fail to adhere to this policy may be held personally liable for copyright infringement, and staff members shall be responsible for instructing students in fair copyright practices and academic integrity, including guidance on citing resources appropriately. Most of the update regarding this policy is to strike 2.5 pages from the previous policy from 1983. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions on copyright material.
Thank you, Dr. Barber. Questions starting with members of the committee and our ex officio member.
Is it not understanding the legal groundwork involved in holding personnel employed by the district and representing the district personally liable? That's an accepted legal principle?
That is the recommended language by the Pennsylvania School Boards Association on their update.
Thank you.
Other open to public comment, Mr. Finnegan.
Just looking for clarification, Dr. Barber. This is for internal use. I only question because periodicals, I'm involved in the publication of a periodical. When someone wants to copy one of our articles, they actually have to send me permission for them to print and reuse an article. But they're typically doing it for republication somewhere else. So, but further on, you say if there's going to be, copyright damage, then you could be liable. So who's checking to see if, let's say, a periodical article can be used without the author coming back and saying, no, you couldn't?
So the process would start with the building principal. So if anybody is copying it, our certified staff would check with the building principal. Then it would escalate through the teaching and learning department and ultimately to Cassandra, myself, and Dr. Rizzo Saunders.
So you're not actually checking with the author to see if you can copy their material?
In the event that we need to, we would do that, but it would be at our level. It wouldn't be at
Does that answer your question, Mr. Finnegan?
Sort of. If you need to, but who determines if you do need to check with the author versus you're just going to do it? No matter what level it happens at.
So we would do that at our level. So we would, do you want to jump in?
But in all cases, or just when you think you need to? I guess that's where I'm heading for this one.
Is it beyond a single copy?
Right, so that would be if they're going to use multiple copies. So their fair use in education is you can make a copy of an article without the author's permission if you are going to use it for educational purposes. Right. Yes.
I guess what I would observe, so the extensive strike, there's a whole lot of the previous policy has been struck, and I think a lot of that was both confusing and some of it is out of date and that kind of thing. But I think, in essence, this policy boils down to holding ourselves accountable and potentially and I think it's appropriate not to be explicit. It says you may be held accountable. We're not sure what that held liable. That does not say who would be doing the holding liable. And I imagine, in practical terms, that would often be if the district were held liable, that might then reflect back on a staff member. It's a very complicated topic from the perspective of this policy being sufficient for the purposes of administration. This leaves a great deal, to the administrative regulations and to the best practices, as well as, when we say we'd like to make sure there's a curriculum around this, we're directing as a board that everybody has got to figure this out and be able to teach it. Is that all appropriate, and does that fit within? Certainly, I feel that's better than 4 pages of stuff, but is this enough to allow the administration to move forward on a fairly complicated legal topic? That would be my question to you,
Yes.
Dr. Barber. Yes.
We do.
Yeah. And of course, I knew the answer because you wouldn't present it if it were not. But I think that's the purpose here, is to make sure that this is clean enough that that administration can use it, and that it's not unduly onerous. It is a very complicated topic, I would agree. So do other members of the committee I think that's the intent here, is to make this exactly what you need to proceed. But it does put you all out in a position where you're going to have to continue to examine and explore this kind of topic. Is that correct?
Yes. I think if we were proposing to take out one of the tenets of the 4 principles doctrine, fair use doctrine, we'd be in trouble. But other than that, we're good.
Yeah. So I think that's an appropriate use for this. Mr. Finnegan.
Just a question, the legal link at the bottom is not a clickable link, but is that the statute that says that a school district can make a single copy without checking with the author?
17.
Yes, that's part of the
So that's
fair
in there?
use.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, with that in mind, is there a motion to be made here? Either member of the committee?
I move to recommend policy 814, copyright materials. I recommend it move to the board for a recommended approval from this committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. Any further discussion?
No, I think it's really clean, the fair use, the 4 standards, practice, again, those are obviously in the administrative regulations, they're gonna dictate that in practice, but this to me feels really clean, so.
Ms. Myers, would you have any interest in adding something about AI?
No.
And
No. I do not want to talk about AI ever again.
good. Well, then we'll let that discussion go. Ms. Myers and I have been in a discussion about AI issues with regard to academic integrity, and it's been quite a discussion. But in any event, with the motion on the table, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, if the members of the committee would approve the motion to move this forward to be recommended for approval by the full board, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstains? Hearing none of those, this passes with unanimously, and we'll move it forward to the board. So that concludes the official policy business for this meeting, and we're a little ahead of schedule. Any other items of interest? We've had some internal discussions, and Dr. Rosa Saunders and I have spoken about working to understand the issues around SROs. I think in general, I would say my sense is that the SRO program is going well, and that it's something that's come up several times with Ms. Jones has brought it up periodically, but that we are working towards that. And there's a set of policies on the docket here to be thought about that are the basic policies for the organization of the board. And President Cronenberg has made a request that we consider those. So in my last couple of policy meetings, because this is coming up on that for me, that's what we'll try to get to, is those set of things. I do want to thank, I know I've been out of town and distracted with some family business, but I appreciate everybody working diligently to get things done, and glad to be able to be here and get this work moved forward. So if there's nothing further, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.
We got 3 minutes. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first meeting of the year for the Curriculum Committee. And I would like to begin by doing a roll call of our committee members, of whom we have one right now today. Dr. McVeigh is not with us, so we have, I'm going to have, Lynn, can you introduce yourself? Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Lynn Golden-Mararki, and I am a committee member.
Great. And then we have additional members of the board and community here. So let's begin with Dave. You want to start?
Good evening, Dave Cronenberg, board member and ex officio to this committee.
Dr. Kimberly Rizzo Saunders, I'm the superintendent.
Go.
You already did
I
yourself.
got mine.
Michael Finnegan, board member and not a member of this committee.
Linda Carrillo, board member, but non-member of this committee.
Great, and thank you for being here, and thanking you in advance for the team that's going to be presenting this evening, so thank you so much. All right, before we actually get into our presentation, we do have a responsibility to approve the committee minutes from June 16th, 2025. The recommended action is that the board accept and approve the minutes of the Special Curriculum Committee meeting of June 16, 2025. So Lynn, can you give me a motion on that?
So moved.
Thank you very much. And between the two of us, do we approve?
Approved.
Approved. Okay. The minutes of the June 16th have been approved. And of course, anytime throughout this meeting, anyone can make public comment, and just let me know if you choose to, but based on who I'm seeing right now in the audience, I don't foresee that happening. And hopefully, those of you who may be listening and viewing us this evening, we hope there are a number of you out there. I think you'll find this presentation today extremely beneficial. So with that, I am going to turn it over for our curriculum mapping action plan to Dr. Rizzo Saunders.
So thanks so much for having us. I am going to get to introduce some people in just a moment, but the goal of today is for us to really get you up to date on what our action plan is regarding our curriculum work this year. I know that I have shared on several occasions that we need to do some intentional and deep work around our Tier 1 instruction and the curriculum that supports that. And so tonight we're really going to talk about that. And we are going to just start out talking about why we map. We're going to talk a little bit about where we've been. Brenna is going to give you all a curriculum basics quiz to make sure we're all on the same page and you understand all the acronyms. And then we're going to talk a little bit about where we are and then where we're headed. Before I start, I do want to just introduce you to some fabulous people. I am honored to work with this team. They are truly incredible. All of them work hard to make what we do better every single day. So I'm going to start with Dr. Jen Miller, who is the K-5 curriculum coordinator, curriculum supervisor. Then we have Rebecca Vitry. She is the 6-12 curriculum supervisor. We have Erica Pye, who is one of our instructional technology coaches. Brenna Austin, wow, that was a brain cramp. Brenna Austin, who is our ELD supervisor, Kelly Figueroa, and she is also an instructional coach. And then you are all familiar with Dr. Mike Barber, who is one of our assistant superintendents. So just really at 150,000 feet, why do we map? So a map is really designed to take us from point A to point B, right? Like that's what maps are for. So when we map curriculum, what we're doing is looking at specific subject areas as well as cross-curricular connections to make sure that we are creating an environment, the tools, the tech, and the techniques that are consistent K-12 without redundancy and without gaps, so that the students who participate in our Tier 1 instructional program are guaranteed to have a viable curriculum no matter what classroom, what school, or what level they are at. So when we map, we're really creating that path from kindergarten until 12th through 12th grade. As we already talked about our portrait of graduate, those pieces, and the map is really how we're going to get our students there. So just to kind of go over our timeline, as you're aware, in the spring of 2025, we started to create the portrait of a KCSD graduate.
as part of that work, the teachers created both the profile, we sent that out for feedback to both the community and the staff, as well as all of you. The teachers then took that work and created grade span profiles, and as well as an instructional focus. From there, we started to develop cornerstone experiences, and we'll talk a little more about that a little later on. That will help us anchor our curriculum cross-curricularly from K to 12 and guarantee a robust curricular experience for each child at each grade level that they will all have in common. In the summer of 2025, we did curriculum facilitation training. So we have about 40 incredible staff members who have just done a wonderful job of giving up their time in the summer to come and work with us so that we can really work to reposition the classroom teachers as the experts in their content area and the experts in their instruction as we move forward. Also, we did the work around the scope and sequence for English language arts from K to 5. And we also started to create a personal finance curriculum map, as well as doing some deep curriculum mapping for grades 6 to 8. So that's where our journey has taken us so far. And I am going to turn it over now to, oh, no, I'm still going, sorry. So that is a timeline piece. Really, this work started almost immediately. It might have started as I was doing the entry plan, almost immediately as I learned that the Tier 1 curriculum here was not common, and it was neither guaranteed nor viable. And so in January of 2025, I shared with all of you, as well as the entire staff, a document called Education 2.0, which really talks about the acquisition of skills that students are going to need when they move into the, really the 21st century here. And in March of 2025, as I already mentioned, we did the work of a portrait of a graduate around that Ed 2.0. What will students need when they graduate high school? May of 2025, we completed that work. And in June of 2025, we started the cornerstone activities. So now I am going to turn it over to the amazing Brenna Austin, and she is actually going to play a little game with you.
Hi, everybody. How are you? We wanted to engage you in some of these terms that we're going to be using tonight and not assume that everyone knows what they are. So we will be playing a game. You'll need to navigate to a website on either your phone or your Chromebook that's in front of you, and we can come assist you to do that. You can open up any web browser, and please navigate to this website. You don't even need to type in www. It's play.blookit.com. Everyone out in the audience, you may also play. Anyone at home, you can play. And we're playing.
We have to sign up or log in, yes?
You actually should just be able to go to play.blookit.com, and you should get something where it says enter a code. You might, if you're on blookit.com, you might be on the wrong thing. You should be on play.blookit.com.
There you go.
Yep, you should be waiting for something that says game ID.
Do I get a point?
Yeah.
You have to go to play.
Oh, right.
You're on your dashboard. Go to play.
Right, hold on, let me go back here.
And we can come around and help you. And I will give you the game ID. Good, help a friend.
Play.
Okay, let's go.
All right.
You have to erase the whole.
Oh, I had to erase the whole thing. Okay, sorry.
All right, if you have navigated to play.blookit.com, thank you, you should enter the following game ID. And we're playing tonight for bragging rights. All right, give me a thumbs up when you're ready to go. Oh, actually, I'll see your names. Appropriate names only, please. We tell that to the students as well. The students like playing this game. You can also be anonymous if you would like to.
That's too late.
We won't find out if you got questions wrong, only if you get them right. I don't see anyone playing from home yet, but maybe we'll have some late joiners. I did allow late joining.
Can I play?
We'll put a delay on yours.
You're so competitive, you're going to want to win.
All right. Is she Tilly? All right, everybody. I think I see 5 players. We're going to get started. Anyone who would like to join late, the ID's at the top. Here's your first question. Which analogy best describes curriculum mapping? So you just need to select the correct answer on your device. So 4 out of 5 people have answered. And you all got it correct. It's a GPS that guides student learning. Very good. All right, Mr. Cronenberg, you're in the lead. All right, here's question 2. True or false? Curriculum maps are created once and never updated. You guys are quick. All right, so that is false. And once we have all of our curriculum maps written, you'll see that we're going to implement a curriculum cycle or we'll be updating them. All right, what is the primary purpose of a curriculum? You're fast. All right, everybody. We'll just pause there for a second. Exactly. It is to guide what students need to learn, and that's important. It's not to prescribe. It's not to make sure that it's the exact same. It's not anything to do with a program, but it guides what the students in Kennett need to learn. That's why it needs to be written by our Kennett teachers. There'll be a question about that.
Do certain students know that? Like,
Did the students know that the teachers make it?
no, did certain students know that their purpose is to guide what students need to learn versus to assign homework daily? Because I've got a couple that.
The homework would be the practice, right? To make sure that they know the curriculum, but you're right, yeah. All right. We still have a winner, a leader up there. What, by answering faster as well. Correct and fast. Correct and fast. How do curriculum maps support equity for students? That's okay. And again, this is just to set the stage for what we're about to talk about. All right, everyone got it correct. So it's to ensure consistent access. We have, for the perfect example would be our elementary schools. And so we have Greenwood, New Garden, Bancroft. We can ensure that all students have equal access to the same curriculum in this way. So we know that all 3rd graders are learning the exact same topics. Oh, we have a new leader. All right, question 5. This one you have to think about a little bit. What are the first 4 steps of curriculum mapping in order? All right, we're a little bit across the board here. For someone that whoever got it right there, very good job. You remembered, or you knew something that we went over with our teachers, that before you do anything, you want to identify what are the things we want them to know. You begin with the end in mind. So what's the purpose of that? You can't start sequencing anything and naming anything until you've determined what you want them to know. Then you have to make sure that what you want them to know, it's all essential, because there's so much we want them to know. We got to just make sure everything is essential. Then we start grouping and sequencing. Yes?
All of the standards in all of the content areas, how many years would it like to take us to teach the
light years. Yeah, right. So we have to make sure there's a list of standards that comes from Pennsylvania. We then make sure we say which ones are essential, and we have a tool for teachers to determine how we know it's an essential or a supporting standard. Then from there, we talk about deconstructing those standards, and that's a question coming up. So first, remember reviewing enduring understandings. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Oh, by the way, what are the essential standards? All right, so we're a little bit split on this one. The essentials, there are so many standards in a curriculum, not all of them are going to be essential. The essential standards are only the most important standards that they need to master to be successful in the next grade of the course. Some of them just support the essential standards. That's what we want to make sure we spend the most time on. They might appear on state tests, but it might not. And the other things are we can't just cover them because people either like them or time allows to. All right. So once they're sequenced, put in order, now it's time to write your units. Which of the following would not be included in a curriculum unit template? Very good. So yes, while that's important, attendance and behavior data, that's not part of a curriculum unit template. These are things, enduring understandings, which we already talked about, the most essential things that we want our kids to know, like our essential standards, the actual standards themselves and the learning targets, and then this tiered vocabulary means there's 3 tiers of vocabulary. Tier 1 vocabulary is the one that we want everyone to know, everyone's going to master, and it's also the vocab of that content area. Tier 2 and Tier 3 vocabulary are like nice to know words that are probably a little bit more complex, but maybe you're not going to use them as often, so you're not going to hit them as often. But they might take more time to explain because they're not the most common words. So there's Tier 1, 2, and 3 vocabulary. All right, a couple more. About how long does it typically take to map a course or a grade level? So it does take, it would be great if we had an entire school year without breaks, but right, that would be like without teaching too. We'd have to, we do talk about shutting down school sometimes just so we can get some, mapping done. But it does take several, and you've seen part of our timeline, several collaborative sessions over months. There are some school districts out there who have people come in over the summer just to write curriculum. Not everyone's able to do that. And that doesn't ensure that everyone's voice is at the table either. Sometimes it's good when you're updating it, but this big project that we're doing now, we need everyone's voices at the table, and that's why we're using our in-service days to do that. So it's going to take the bulk of this year to get a lot of this work done. All right, we're almost there. Why do teachers deconstruct or take apart standards? Great job, everybody. So you can't just put a standard up on the board and think that everyone's going to understand what it means. You have to take that standard and say, what does this really mean in the context of what I'm teaching? What are the vocab words that I really need to make sure that I'm hitting? What are the enduring understandings, the essential questions? What activities do I have to do so that the kids really understand what this means? Why is this even important in science? Or why is this important in math? How does it connect to other subjects? So it really breaks it into student-friendly learning targets, which that's the reason why we're here. Not just the kids don't understand what a standard is, right? We have to make it accessible and comprehensible to our kiddos. All right, it's a race between Dave and Lynn. I have 2 more questions for you. What is the big win of curriculum mapping? All right, we'll pause there for a second. So is it less paperwork for teachers? I don't know. It's going to guide everyone's instruction. It's going to, cause for more collaboration. So maybe it could be less paperwork because everyone would have a common goal. It's not necessarily more standardized tests for students. It doesn't really have to do anything with standardized tests. And it doesn't always mean that fewer instructional resources are needed. Sometimes it might mean that more instructional resources are needed because we determine that our curriculum maybe doesn't match what we really want to teach. But it does mean a clear and consistent journey from kindergarten through graduation. We did a lot of work when we were talking about the portrait of a graduate. The kindergarten teachers were determining what kids would have to do by the time they left high school. And high school teachers looked at what they actually do in kindergarten. We don't get enough of that time for that vertical articulation, and realize that the kindergarten teachers have as much impact on the high school diploma as the high school teachers do. They're there for a journey K through 12. 2 more questions. All right, why do teachers write curriculum maps instead of just purchasing them off the shelf? Why don't we just buy a curriculum map? Great, and I think I might have given this away before when I said it, but we want to be the people that determine. We are the people of Kennett. We know our kids the best. We can take a look at the standards from Pennsylvania and then determine how that affects our kiddos in Kennett. We know the type of learners that we have, and then we can make sure that it matches our unique needs of our students and our community. All right, the last question, and then we'll have our final tally. How are purchase programs like iReady, you've heard that term before, iReady or any other textbook series different from curriculum maps? Very good. We would like to write our curriculum so that it is program agnostic. Our curriculum should be able to be used whether we are using iReady or any other math program out there. The program should support the curriculum, not the curriculum being written for a program. So it's taking a different mindset, I think, depending on what subject area we have, to make that happen, but it's really good work for our kiddos. All right, are we ready? Drum roll, please. Our winner in 3rd place, Tilly. 2nd place, Lynn. And Mr. Cronenberg, the winner, for bragging rights only, the winner, the king of curriculum mapping. Thanks, everybody, for playing along with us. There you go. We, again, this is not to quiz you, but just to engage you a little bit into the conversation. And you've probably heard a lot of these terms before, and you're going to be hearing them, so that when I pass the microphone to one of my colleagues and they say enduring understanding or essential standards or deconstructing standards, you can be like, oh, I got that one wrong. So I know what that one is when you're talking about it. Thanks, everybody.
All right. So we are going to be talking about next what we've done and what we're going to be doing next. We have an upcoming Professional Development Day on October 2nd, and we're excited about that because we're going to continue to engage in the work. So you've heard what we've done. What we did is we created essentially a checklist for our teachers to be able to follow through the process. Part of that checklist included some of that pre-work that we did, the development of the profile of a graduate, the development of our I can statements, and those I can statements all have a connection to the profile of a graduate, and it's really what we want students to be able to do across the board in grade spans K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9, 12. Each one of our profile of a graduate connections as you see in the flower, have a connected I can statement table that teachers are utilizing to help build the foundation of the curriculum work that they're doing. The other work that we did in step 3 was we created an instructional focus. Our instructional focus is connected to the tools, targets, techniques, and environment. That's really what we want to see across the board in every single classroom that we walk into. In addition to just creating the instructional focus, we also connected it to the Danielson framework. And that's the framework that teachers follow when they're being evaluated and observed. So it makes that connection for the teachers, and it really lays a foundation for what we should see in any grade level, in any content area across the board regarding those environment, targets, tools, and techniques. The next thing that we did was we identified, in addition to needing some structure for the groups and providing them really with that roadmap to the work that we're doing, is we identified our curriculum mapping groups, and within those groups, we had our facilitators. Our facilitators attended the training over the summer where we walked them through the process and helped build their knowledge of curriculum mapping. In addition, we created in that middle column B, subject area guiding documents. Within those subject area guiding documents, we provided them with all of the tools that they would need to support them through the process of curriculum writing, provided them with resources, templates, and you'll hear a little bit more about those templates and tools as we walk through, but it's really guiding them through the work and giving them a structured foundation to the work that we're doing through curriculum mapping, professional development. So we talked about building the foundation. That was step 5. As you can see, we have some nice visuals on here. Curriculum mapping is not a linear path. You can see that nice curvy road where cars are traveling, some are making little U-turns, some are going backwards, because curriculum mapping looks like that. You might end up going forward and you might have to go backwards. You might have to revise. You might have to turn around, and that's okay. We value our teachers' input through this process, and they're critical members in creating these products to get from A to B, and it's not going to be a straight line. So as you can see the example below that, there is no A to B, there is no step down, there is no spiral. It really is a visual of that first one up there where you're taking every turn, you're going backwards, you're going forwards to get to that end point. We also talked to teachers about backwards design. So we utilized backward design in developing curriculum mapping, and we have 3 stages of that. Stage 1, identifying the results. Stage 2, designing assessments. And stage 3, those instructional activities. It's important that we're thinking of what we want students to end with as we're writing the curriculum. That's part of step 5. Then we're going to go into step 6. So with step 6, we have essentially multiple components. With step 6, we have our phase 1, our developers for phase 2. Phase 1 includes the writing of those maps. So we're really thinking about all of the components and all of the pieces that go into writing a curriculum map. You're going to hear a little bit more about our Atlas template and our Atlas platform. That is the platform that our teachers are going to be writing their curriculum in. Prior to getting training on that, we have created our own Atlas template that they can actually fill in and talk through as they're thinking about what components are going to go into their map. Our phase 1 maps, we are excited and hopeful that we will have a phase of maps that we will be able to bring to the board in March of 2026. We also will have our Atlas developers writing those maps, and then we are excited to have phase 2 of those maps come to the board in May of 2026, and any that are not coming to the board at either of those dates will continue writing through the process to ensure that we can bring all of our maps to the board. As we're writing the maps, it's important that our teachers are thinking about that instructional priorities lens. So they're thinking about the profile of a graduate. They're thinking about the grade level spans. They're thinking about the instructional focus and ensuring all of those components are embedded within the maps as they're writing. And I'm going to turn it over to Jen Miller.
All right, so we're approaching step 7 of the curriculum mapping journey here, and this is some of the work that we are currently working through and we'll be continuing this Thursday, are identifying those enduring understandings that we want our students to know. It's important that teachers, after they look at all of those standards, that they decide and think about what are the transferable skills that we really want our students to know. And so one of the things that they do is look at each standard and then develop some overarching concepts or thoughts that will help guide instruction. So those can last the whole year to help students answer. And then we move into the next phase of our unit planning, which is taking all of the standards that they're looking at and grouping and sequencing those standards by unit and determining those clusters of standards so that they can be more focused and deliberate in the instruction. Which moves us to step 9, which you heard a little bit also about in the quiz there, the essential versus supporting standards. So yes, there's a lot of standards to especially Pennsylvania standards. In fact, Dr. Marzano, as we talked a little earlier, a researcher around curriculum work, said that the standards should be realigned from K-12 to K through 22 because it would take that long for you to essentially cover all of those standards. So what does a teacher do? A teacher needs to think through the standards and filter them out using those 4 words there: endurance, leverage, readiness, and assessment. To help decide which of those standards are essential and which ones are supporting. So it doesn't mean that we're not teaching the standards, but we are spending more time helping students to dig a little bit deeper into what we deem as the essential standards so that they can develop those transferable skills that they need to go into the 21st century. All right. And then after identifying those essential standards, they often are written in a way that's not easy to understand for the student or even for the teacher. So we're doing a process, and we have a protocol for this. We're deconstructing the standard, which is literally what it sounds like. You're taking apart this standard and really looking at it and determining what knowledge does the student need in order to master that standard? What skills are needed? And that is really an important part of the curriculum mapping process because it helps you to determine what your instruction is focused around as well as your assessment. So you're really going back to what we heard in the little Blicket game earlier, that backwards design, really being intentional about what it is that you're instructing the students on because there just isn't enough time in the school year to do everything. All right. And then that takes us to step 11, which is now we're getting a lot closer in the curriculum mapping process here to developing the actual map. This is a template that we've designed to kind of help teachers that are working on all of this organize the information that they'll be instructing by the standards, the objectives, the vocabulary, what words are being included, the tier 1 vocabulary, 2, 3, and then approximately how many days of instruction would a unit take, and then as well as going back to those enduring understandings, what units will help ensure that the students are going to reach those enduring understandings at the end of the school year.
At certain points, we are going to have our teams check in with us. And so after step 11, we would like to collect their scope and sequences for the teaching and learning department to review. So the next step would be for them to learn how to use the Atlas curriculum mapping software. In Atlas, teachers will write and upload their unit resources, ensuring that everything is aligned and accessible. Now, we were very intentional about waiting to provide them access to the platform because we wanted the teachers to move thoughtfully and through the curriculum mapping process before we give them the tool first. So to support this transition, the teachers will begin with an on-demand video training created by our department. The video will walk them through its features and applications, and then afterward, they will explore the platform with their facilitator. And of course, additional in-person training and support will be available for any team that really needs it. Our goal is to make sure that every teacher feels confident using the Atlas as a powerful tool to map, refine, and share the curriculum. So during that training, teachers will learn how Atlas helps us transform our curriculum data into insights that we can actually act on. We can quickly see where the standards and learning goals are taught and assessed, run reports to spot gaps and overlaps, and we can use that information to refine our instruction. With the vertical and horizontal scope and sequence views, Atlas makes it so easy to see how the learning progresses across grades and across our subjects. So this will help us identify gaps, reduce repetition, and build opportunities for collaboration. So the comparative unit calendar view, this is kind of one of those calendar views, allows us to view multiple courses side by side and compare units details and highlight the common themes. It's actually a powerful way to coordinate and encourage cross-disciplinary projects, as Kelly will explain a little bit later. Atlas really enhances our collaborations. Teachers can leave notes, share resources, and give feedback directly on the platform. Online discussions really keep our curriculum work connected and evolving as a team effort. After they complete the training, and once the teaching and learning department has provided feedback on their scope and sequence, they will begin writing their first unit in Atlas. So as you can see on your screen, it's kind of scrolling through. We have designed a unit template aligned to our common instructional focus, the targets, the techniques, and the tools. This will help ensure consistency across the district while giving teachers the flexibility to design the meaningful instruction. So as you can see, each unit is very comprehensive. It includes an overview, the enduring understandings, standards, and specific learning objectives. Teachers will also build in tiered vocabulary and connect their work to our KCSD profile of graduate with the I can statements. And the template guides our teachers to outline key lessons and activities, add their assessments, and identifies scaffolds, supports, and enrichment opportunities. And finally, teachers will be able to attach core and supplemental resources along with listing any additional materials that they need for the unit. This process ensures that every unit is very intentional, thorough, and aligned to our district instructional goals. Once Unit 1 is complete, the teams will submit it again to the teaching and learning department for review. We'll provide feedback, and once approved, we'll give them the green light to keep moving forward to the remaining units. This again ensures consistency and quality from just the very beginning of this. So they'll continue writing their remaining units. At any point, if a team feels that they would like a unit to be reviewed, they can go ahead and submit that to us for additional feedback, or they can wait until they have completed their remaining units. Once those units are complete, they'll submit it for our final review by our department, and Then, if everything's in good shape, the course will be moved forward to the board for review. As already explained, we anticipate the first wave will be between March through May 2026. And our long-term goal for Atlas is to make the curriculum public-facing. This will give parents, community members, and stakeholders a clear understanding of what is being taught across our district. It's very important to note that not every component of the curriculum map will be visible to the public. So for example, assessments and specific resources will remain internal to protect the integrity of the instruction. But what the public will see are the unit overviews, the standards, giving them the transparency into the learning journey that our students experience, but without compromising that sensitive material. So this step will really strengthen our communication with the community while keeping the focus on the student learning and the curriculum alignment. So now I'm going to turn it over to Kelly, who's going to share about our Cornerstone experiences.
All right, this is a little bit about where we have been and still what we have to do moving forward. Based on our work of the Portrait of a Graduate last spring, in June, the teaching and learning team facilitated an activity to help teachers brainstorm cornerstone activities and experiences. The purpose of these experiences are to anchor a student's progress through school. So think of the 12 to 5 or 12, a K to 12 lens of students' progression and what they're learning. These help serve as reference points for students and families so that they have coherence, equity, and alignment across our curriculum. The staff were divided into groups by grades and or subject areas with cross-curricular references. And they worked to identify things that we've already been doing in our district and ideas for the future about how we can tie it all together. So these experiences are going to help serve as cornerstones to help our students see the vision in our curriculum mapping journey. Many times these experiences have ties to our local resources and community. So similar to what you said, Mr. Cronenberg, the purpose for students, these cornerstone activities would help them see the cohesion in our curriculum mapping. Although these cornerstone experiences are very much still a work in progress, our goal is to continue to work on and revise these experiences as our maps take shape and more professional development time allows. Our main focus this year, based on our limited amount of time, is getting the actual maps completed for board review. And then we'd like to come back and revise and continue to work on some of these cornerstone experiences. As you look over the K-12 experiences, you may notice many cross-curricular and even cross-grade connections, which will give students that cohesion that we are looking for. So that's a little bit of kind of where we have started with Cornerstone and where we still have to go. And then finally, Dr. Barber is going to talk about forward planning.
Thank you, Ms. Figueroa. So you've heard where we've come from, where we are now, and we're going to look a little bit forward into where we're going. So in the summer of 2026, we're going to continue with our curriculum mapping and building out our consensus maps. We're also going to look at implementing some of those cornerstone activities and learning experiences that Kelly spoke about at the beginning of 26-27. And then, of course, in March and May of 2027, we probably will have our second wave of curriculum maps coming forward to the board. Thank you. So it's important to understand that all of this is directly related to priority 1, goal 1 of our strategic plan, which is to ensure that all students have access to a guaranteed and viable curriculum. And that is the focus of why we map and tying everything together with all of these initiatives that we have going on. So once we have the maps, how will we know whether we're successful or not? Well, we're going to continue to evaluate student data with the use of our Linkit database system, and we are going to have a laser-like focus on all of our identified subgroup performances and closing the achievement gap. So that's how we're going to use Linkit to move ourselves forward and to measure ourselves on whether we're being effective. And do we have There is no booklet for this, but I think you understand from Brenna that curriculum mapping is fluid, that we're going to constantly be looking at making changes and bettering ourselves based on those data. So it's a continuous cycle of improvement. We're going to continue to build out consensus maps, but then you may begin to hear a term called diary mapping. And just like a journal, we have our consensus map, which is our plan, what we think we're going to accomplish this particular unit. Who am I? K to 5. Let's just say hypothetically, it's going to take us 10 periods to get through some of those cornerstone learning experiences for our students. But the fact is we planned 10 and we needed 12, or maybe we needed 8, and we're going to move into our collaborative teams and we're going to make those adjustments as necessary within those grade spans. So that will be a term that's forward coming that you'll hear about diary mapping, just keeping our notes on what did we actually cover, how long did it take, so we can make those changes. And I think Kelly did an excellent job of explaining where we are with Cornerstones. So that's where we are going. I'm now going to turn it back to Dr. Rizzo Saunders to bring us home and answer any questions.
So we're going to open it up for questions. I just want to recognize the people that are sitting across from you because they have done the lion's share of the work, taking what each other is bringing to the table and making it better, deepening the work, creating the checklist to make sure that the journey for the teachers is intentional and meaningful. And with that, I will open it up for questions.
Okay, anyone have any specific questions?
I have a question. The public-facing page, will that be after board approval? So is it going to be late 2026, 2027? And when exactly would that become available to the public?
The answer is yes. I think when we say long-term goal, we would want to make sure, and I'm going to just speak for everyone and tell me if you don't agree, one, to make sure that it's appropriate and forward-facing, that we actually have it correct in-house before we put something on display to the public. So for us, that would be kind of like the shiny outside-facing, document that everybody gets to see. I think that we need to make sure that our maps are appropriately complete. We're going to have several waves of maps to bring forward based on the work that teachers are doing. They have focused coursework to work on first, and then a second wave of coursework when they finish that. So those really have to be completed first before we can work on creating that forward-facing document, and then we'll kind of put them on display at the end for everyone.
Yeah.
Just to add on to it, I think it would be more beneficial to wait a little bit until we have substantial amount, because we can turn them on singular in Atlas when we have them, but I think it would be better for the public to see a list of them instead of just a few of them as we go.
Well, I agree it should be completed. It's obviously not going to be the 2025 6th year because we're not going to get approvals till March, April, May. So it's going to be next school year, maybe second half of next school year. That's kind of what I had in mind. So it wasn't going to be now. You don't want to put it out till it's right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Liv.
Yeah, thank you. I love that you incorporated wanting to get input from educators. And I'm just curious, what does that look like? Because that is a hard thing to do, to get collaborative time together. So I'm just curious.
So all of our educators in Kennett Consolidated School District are engaged in curriculum writing. We have devoted our professional development days during this school year to provide them with professional development about curriculum writing, and their facilitators and our team are guiding them through that process throughout those days. Some of them are the in-service days through the year, and some of them are Monday hours that they are devoting to this process. So their voice is really their voice through this process. And we wanted to capture what their thoughts were, what their contributions were, and what they have identified as those essential standards and those enduring understandings. And they're really working collaboratively together to write their curriculum maps.
And it can be messy, right? It looks like it's not perfect, but it's around 300 and some staff in 41 groups. So we identified 41 curriculum groups, and you only see this many people at this table. So that's why we have 40-some facilitators who we trained in a 4-day training. I think some of you stopped by that training. And then we train them, they go out and train their colleagues. And then each of those 41 groups, we all have like 3 to 4 teams that we're responsible for checking in. So a lot of checks and balances, a lot of support, and a lot of managing adults and educators, and a lot of feelings on, past curriculum session, all of it. But I think we did a good job of honoring past work, but also like, okay, but now it's time to move forward with the new work as well.
Any other questions?
This is a huge journey for KCSD. So thank you for being at the helm of this journey, and thank you for the time you're spending, including this time you're spending on a Monday night away from your families. So we're going to see some curriculum maps come to us in the spring. I've never really seen one before. I would like to be able to think that if it's presented to me for approval, and I don't know who's the answer to this question, if it's presented to me for approval, I'm going to have a sense of how to evaluate it. Can whomever is the answerer provide me with some tips on what I should be looking for to help do a good job evaluating?
So we actually talked about that before we put this presentation together, on whether or not that would be something that we should talk about right now. But we will actually spend some time with the board to provide you how to look at the map. What are you looking for? What should a quality map look like? With that said, there is no one on the team that's going to let a map come to you that is not of high quality. And I think that one of the things that surprised me a little when I got here was that the board approves all curriculum. And what the board has been doing is approving the programs that have come forward. Obviously, you should be doing that because that's a cost. But it's really important that the board, as the representatives of the community, decide what it is that the community's children should be learning. And this is really the representation of that. Our curriculum should be a little different than the curriculum in Unionville or Westchester, because our students should be our priority, and we should be teaching our students what it means to be a community in Kennett Consolidated School District. So we will spend some time with you going over those first couple of maps with a fine-tooth comb, and as it moves on, I'm sure you guys will find it easier and easier.
Awesome.
Long answer to a short question.
It was not a short question. I appreciate that.
I think the one thing that is important to communicate to our parents and community, that as these maps are being developed, it's not that things are not happening instructionally in the classrooms. So how would you speak to that when we're talking to parents and community?
So we are still instructing based on the standards that the state of Pennsylvania has put in place. So teachers essentially are teaching students aligned to those standards based on content area, based on kindergarten, all the way to 12th grade. So there are still instructional focuses occurring. Teachers are aligning those instructional focuses to programs and resources they have within the classrooms. They're really identifying what program or resource is appropriate to teach this concept or skill to the students so they can leave this classroom with a certain knowledge base, and what do they need to leave my classroom with in order to be successful in the next grade level as well. We do have some curriculum within the district that teachers are utilizing aligned to those standards with those resources embedded. This process really gives us a coherent and an aligned curriculum map from K to 12, aligned to our profile of a graduate statements, aligned to our I can statements, and aligned to our instructional focus. So it gives us a stronger foundation than what we've ever had in the past.
Have we considered doing a presentation of this sort to any of the school meetings with parents, any of the PTOs?
I can speak to that as the middle school PTO president. So I sometimes feel lucky that I get to wear the hat in many different places as a parent, a community member, and an employee. But Rebecca and Jen presented or are in the process, I don't know that you finished the last PTO meeting, but presenting a parent compact or a family compact with each PTO, and then sharing that compact out with the notion of what the expectation is from both students and staff at Kennett. So what it means to be a Kennett student and what each group can agree to bring to the table in terms of making each student's learning successful. And I think it's kind of cool with what Rebecca said about creating these maps. The teachers are doing this already. Erica and I are in classrooms providing coaching. The administrators are in classrooms providing walkthroughs and giving feedback to teachers based on what they're doing. It's just going to make it a lot easier for teachers. They're already doing this now, but they have to do a lot of the messy work on their own in their classroom or while they're planning. This will actually give them the roadmap to kind of just do it. So they're doing it now, but it's not a pretty process. In the future, for new teachers and or as things change, small tweaks or just handing them the curriculum will make things a lot easier.
And I think, too, we're really investing in the future of Kennett. So many of us have been here for a long time. Like, this is my 23rd year here. Erica's been here for longer than that as a student as well. A lot of our knowledge lives in the historical knowledge on people's computers, or, we've always done it this way, binders. We're really investing in the future of Kennett, ensuring that everything's going to be a really high quality product for the next generation of teachers that are going to come in. We have so much good stuff happening in Kennett right now, and we're really, our goal is to make sure that great aligned, memorialized things are happening in Kennett, and that there is a true cycle of curriculum.
Great. And the more parents know, I think the word will get out to the rest of the community. So it's great work that you all are doing at this point, and the enthusiasm that you have is just amazing to me. And you did a fantastic job presenting to us this evening. And again, as Dave said, thank you for coming out tonight on a Monday night of all things, too. That's not always easy. So really keep up the great work that you're doing. I may not show a lot of enthusiasm, but I am excited about what you're doing and the progress that we're going to make. So it's going to be great to see these curriculum maps come spring. Thank you, guys. Excellent. Any other comments from anybody? Okay, superb job. Keep it going. Keep that energy up. It's October. We're into October. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Before we close this evening, again, I don't see people who might want to make public comment, but of course I have to put it out there. So our next meeting will be October 27th at 7 o'clock here at Mary D. Lang. And the topics are going to be the MTSS update and title funding and staffing will be the topic. And we are planning on putting all the topics on our website. We were just, Kimberly and I were meeting and we put in December, and we really don't have a December curriculum meeting, but we're thinking of adding a December meeting on I think it's to be the 16th. But, and then that way we can put all the topics that people can see on the website for planning purposes. So thank you again, everybody. Have a great rest of the evening and have a wonderful week. The meeting's adjourned. It is exciting work. Are you kidding? It's great. Yep. Great.
Yep. We need to put together what does it mean to be a Kennett parent?
It's really nice question because parents might think that we're not doing a good job.